And again, we are talking all about the new long form tool and how you can use that to build longer, kind of more in-depth stylized story packages. So before I show you kind of how to build it on the back end of the site, I do just want to give you an example of what this long form looks like or what it could look like. So let me click into this story here. So basically, what you're going to have is a much more stylized story, first of all. And you have the option to split that into different sections that we're calling segments. So you're going to have kind of the top part of the story, which has your main information, headline, deck here, byline maybe. So you still have kind of that top part of the story, but then as I scroll down here, you're going to start seeing those segments or those different parts of the story. And what you're going to notice, I'll just kind of scroll slowly here. What you're going to notice is that each segment has options for inputting different content, whether it is text only, text with media, whether that media is photo or video or audio. So you've got different options for content. Each segment also has its own unique heading and option to add a byline. So you could have multiple staff members working on different segments that are part of this long form story. And then you will also see that each segment has potential for different design. So you could really have kind of a long form story that's got segments of all kinds of designs and really vary it up to create a visually appealing story package here. So this is what we are going to be creating using that long form template or using that long form format. I'm going to hop into my site's dashboard here. And to start, I'm just going to go ahead and set up a new story, which I can do by hovering over stories here and adding a new story. And I'm going to start by filling out some of the information for kind of my main story. If I go back into that example, like I said, I want to fill in like a headline for it, maybe a deck. I want to choose the category, upload a featured image, just like I would for any other story. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. We will call this one long form webinar story, put in a secondary headline here. Now, when you're setting up the main part or the main story, it is up to you if you would like to include a byline here. I think you could probably skip that byline field just because when we start adding the segments to this story, to this long form, remember each of those segments can have its own byline. So I don't necessarily think you would need to add a byline here. You can just add those bylines for each individual segment. The story body field is another one that I'm going to skip here. As soon as I select that long form format, this story body field is going to basically go away and it's going to prompt me to add segments instead. So again, you can skip that story body field there. Kind of coming over to the right side here, the two templates to select from to use that long form would be either of the immersive templates. So you can do immersive photo or immersive half photo. I would recommend using the immersive half photo. That one is going to look kind of the best in terms of formatting and spacing. So you can use either one again, but I would recommend immersive half photo. As soon as I select either of those templates here, I have the option to use the long form format. So I'm going to go ahead and select the immersive half photo and select the box to use the long form format. And what you're going to see as soon as I select that box to use the long form is that that story body, like I said, is going to collapse and you're going to be prompted to add your segments in here. And we'll come back to that in a minute. Couple other things, I'm going to go ahead and set a featured image for this story. And again, that is kind of for this main part of the story up here at the top. So we will set a featured image. I'm just going to grab one from my media library there. And then I would also make sure that you select a category for this long form story. So maybe this one's going to be in news or maybe features. So you can select whatever category you want there. All right, so now I've got kind of the base of my story all set up. I can start building it out and adding those segments. So I'm going to add a story segment here. And like I talked about earlier, you're going to be prompted to add a heading, whatever content you want, and then you can design the segment here as well. So I'm going to keep it simple and we'll just call this one segment number 1. And then I can type whatever text I want here, just as you would for a regular story on your website. So let me just grab some text and fill this in so that it kind of looks like something. And within this text, you've got all of the same text editing functions that you normally would here. So, if you need to add a hyperlink or add a bulleted list or whatever you need to do, those are all up at the top here. You also have the option within these segments to add in our SNO story elements. So for instance, if I wanted maybe in the middle of this segment, I wanted to add a pull quote or an info box or something like that, you do have the option within these segments to add those SNO story elements in as well. And then at the bottom here, as I mentioned, you can have separate bylines for each segment. So you can have students coming in and working on a long form package together, and they can each add their byline to the segments that they worked on. In the center here, I can choose if I want this segment to have an image or a video or audio embed. If I don't want either of those, I can just obviously leave it blank and then it will be text only. But I will go ahead and add an image to this segment. Again, I'm just going to choose one that is in my media library here. Now, kind of a cool option that we have in here is, I mean, obviously, if we look at this long form, it is really kind of intentionally designed for kind of a desktop display. So it's going to be very horizontal. But we do have an option to add an alternate image for mobile if you would like. So if you have a more maybe vertically aligned image that you'd want to use for mobile, you do have the option to add that alternate image here if you'd like to do that. Kind of cool option, I think. And then lastly over here, I can choose my segment design. And your design choices are really going to vary here depending on the formatting that you select for the segment. So if I do full screen media as background, that's going to kind of push this photo to the back of my text of my segment. If I do full screen media above, it'll display that photo up above the text or the content of the segment. Media on the left or on the right. Media above content will be very similar to the full screen media above content. The only difference is it won't actually stretch that photo all the way across. It'll just be kind of above the text. Media within story segment is also another option, placing that media within the contents here. And then if I didn't have any media, I do have the full screen text option there. And so as I kind of toggle between these different options, you probably see these additional settings down below kind of adjusting themselves a little bit. So we'll do full screen media above content for this one. And by default, the text area background for these long form segments is going to be black. So kind of like this appearance here, that black background with white text. But you can invert that if you want and do a white background with black text, or I mean, you could do whatever background color and text color you want. Now, these are kind of the basic design options, but if you wanted even more to customize and play around with, you can toggle on these advanced design options, and then you'll just see kind of more things that you can customize in here. Adding margins, playing around with the corner radius, playing around with the heading font size and alignment and byline and body text font size, border color, and things of that nature. So again, I think you can design a pretty good looking segment just with these basic options, but if you wanted to show those advanced design options and customize even more of that segment design, you do have the option to do that there. Then I would just repeat this process for however many segments I want as part of this long form. So I'm going to go ahead and add another story segment here. We'll call this one segment number 2. grab some text for it, and you can have up to 50 of these segments. I mean, really, you could there's just so much potential with this long form tool. You could have certain segments be only text and certain segments be only media and kind of vary it that way. You could really kind of create a long, in-depth story package using this tool. So I've added my text for this second segment. I'm going to add another segment byline here. For this one, I'm going to actually embed video. So I'm going to do this add video or embed code option here. And then I've got a YouTube video that I want to embed in this segment. So I'm just going to jump out and grab the embed code for that. Place that here. I can choose the location for that embed or that video. I can add a credit line and a caption to it if I want to there. And then again, I've got my design options over here. So I think this one would probably look good with media above content. And then again, I can adjust any of these settings that I want over here. So I would repeat that process for however many segments I want. Again, you can have up to 50. I'm going to call it good at just these 2 segments here. And a couple other things before we publish this. If you need to rearrange the order of your segments, you can do that using these arrows in the upper right-hand corner and just click and drag. Now, I kind of think that it is kind of hard to click and drag all of that information. So I always recommend collapsing all of your segments first before you click and drag and rearrange them. Just makes it a little easier. It's going to hide the text and the media and things like that. And then you can expand those segments back out once you have rearranged them. You've got the collapse and expand option there. The other thing, if you ever need to delete a segment, there is this little red X in the corner. Just note that if you delete that segment, there is no way to restore it or get it out of the trash or anything like that. So you will get this warning message before you delete it, and then you would have to recreate that segment entirely if it was deleted accidentally or something like that. So just a quick note there that if you delete a segment, that is kind of permanent and you would have to recreate it. So once I have my segments all set up, designed how I want, I can come to the publishing box. I can obviously save it as a draft. I can preview it prior to publishing, or in this case, I'm going to go ahead and just publish this one. And now if we go take a look, I'm going to see up at the top, that is kind of the contents of that main story that I set up there. And then as I scroll down, I am going to see my segments with the design formatting that I selected. So for this one, I did full screen media above content. So you can see it kind of stretches that image. And then my content shows up below here. And then this one, I did media above content. So it doesn't stretch all the way out, but it is still above the content of my segment there. So that is the long form. Again, if I needed to come in here and add a story segment, add additional segments to it, I would have the option to do that. Can you send me a link to that story in the Zoom chat that you're working on and I can take a quick look at it? Great, thank you. I'm going to stop the recording here really quickly.